Hi, and welcome to the Men on the Path to Love podcast. Safe and Sound, How to Build Safety and Trust in Relationship episode. I'm Bill Simpson, your host. I coach men who want to stop suffering in relationship and who want a deeper sense of love and connection. I coach them how to do it and how to be the best version of themselves and live the life they love. Safety and trust are so important in relationship. I know for me, it's part of what allows me to feel free to be my authentic self in my relationship. And it's one of the top priorities in how I treat my wife. I want her to always feel safe in our relationship. Now, I've said this before when it comes to our spouse or partner feeling physically safe. It's understanding that for the most part, men are bigger and stronger than women. And that in itself can create an underlying or subconscious current that at any moment it could be physically unsafe for them. It's so important to remember that and to behave in a way that helps to create a sense of physical safety. Now, what I'm going to focus on in this episode is creating emotional safety in your relationship. And for a lot of men, creating emotional safety is more challenging than creating physical safety. And there are reasons for this. One is how men have been conditioned socially or culturally. We have to be strong and not show emotion or talk about our emotions unless we're angry or something more acceptable to men. Being vulnerable is considered showing weakness. And ironically, being vulnerable is one of the best ways to create safety and build trust. I'll get into that more a little later on. Another reason why it could be challenging to create emotional safety for men in relationship is from our past experiences and old emotional wounds. This was the case for Eric. Not his real name, of course. Eric had always been, a decent guy, yet when it came to relationships, his emotional wounds from the past got in the way in his relationships. When Eric was growing up, he never felt like his parents really got him or understood him, and he felt neglected a lot. They meant well and all, it's just that neither one of them really showed much emotion, especially when it came to showing affection. And when Eric would express himself emotionally, he would get shut down or criticized, especially by his father, who would say things like, "Oh, stop whining," or "I'll give you something to cry about." Well, this ultimately caused Eric to shut down himself emotionally, keeping his emotions inside for fear that he would be criticized or be rejected. There was also an underlying sense of being abandoned, not physically because his parents were physically there, but they were emotionally absent, leaving him feeling abandoned emotionally. Well, later in life, as Eric got into relationships, his wounded past played out in ways that left his partners feeling emotionally unsafe. He had a really hard time being vulnerable. He wouldn't express himself emotionally, which made it hard to really connect. One example was when one of his partners asked about their future, and he would kind of hem and haw, he would give vague answers or change the subject. And this left her feeling disconnected and confused, and she broke up with him. Eric's jealousy would show up too because of his subconscious fear of being abandoned or that his partner would choose someone else. So when his partners would be talking to another guy, he would interrogate them with a bunch of questions. At times, he would go as far as monitoring their phones and social media. And this kind of behavior threw trust out the window and left his partners feeling like they had to walk on eggshells when he was around. They couldn't just relax and be themselves. And so ultimately, they would leave. And along with Eric's jealousy was his need to be in control. It was his way of keeping from feeling rejected. So he would have to be in control of everything in the relationship, whether it was when and how they spent time together, to what clothes his partner was wearing, or even their opinions. And over time, his partners would feel suffocated and leave. And the thing was, none of these partners were really able to say to Eric what they were feeling in a way that he got it. The impact his behavior was having on them. They only shared that they were tired of it and would just break up. Well, all that changed when Eric met Erica. Not her real name. Erica was different. Erica was very strong, yet she was patient and compassionate. And it got to the point with Eric's behavior that her patience was wearing thin, and she started to feel unsafe emotionally in the relationship, especially with his jealousy. Well, unlike his previous partners, Erica broke it down in a firm yet kind way. She told Eric straight up that she loved him, yet his jealous behavior had to go. That she didn't trust him and didn't feel safe in the relationship, and that she couldn't be in a relationship where she didn't feel safe. Well, this certainly woke Eric up, and with the thought of losing someone he felt so deeply for, he decided he had to do something, and that was to seek therapy to try to get to the bottom of what was getting in the way of his relationships. It was through therapy where he was able to connect the dots of his past wounds, the lack of emotional support from his parents, feeling rejected and abandoned, to how it played out in his relationships. Once he got that, he was introduced to the power of vulnerability and being able to talk openly about his feelings. He got that by talking about his fears and insecurities with his partner, rather than shutting down or trying to hide his feelings, that he could create a stronger sense of safety and trust in the relationship. And that's when I came into the picture to team up with his therapist in offering mindfulness and self-compassion skills to help him get a stronger sense of himself so that he could bring his strength to his relationship with Erica. And after lots of practice and hard work, Eric was able to let go of his jealous behavior. Not that he didn't feel jealous at times, he still did. He just let go of acting out on it, right? He was also able to let go of having to be in control and learn to trust Erica, and that her feelings and opinions were valid, and that he supported her independence. Well, all of Eric's efforts paid off as he was able to create more trust and safety in his relationship. And Erica, too, was able to support Eric on his journey of self-growth and give him what he needed to feel safe and trusting as well. It never ceases to amaze me when I see couples commit to their love, owning their own stuff, and making the tough and necessary changes, how their relationship transforms into one of fulfillment and longevity. Man, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. So, what can you do to create more safety and trust for your spouse or partner? Well, some of the key elements for creating safety and trust include, number one in my book, of course, is communication. Talk openly and honestly. And as hard as it may be totally transparent, man. Now, that's not to say that you don't filter things that would hurt your spouse or partner. Just because you had a thought doesn't mean you have to act on it if it's hurtful, right? That's not building trust. It's about being clear and honest so you can minimize misunderstandings. And a part of communication is listening actively, or active listening, however you want to say it, without judgment, and make sure you listen to understand and be supportive. Ask if your partner or spouse feels safe, and find out what you can do to help her feel safer. I've done that with my wife, and it's really helped. Another way to create safety and trust is being emotionally present and vulnerable. And as I mentioned earlier, this can be challenging for men. Yet when you are open with how you feel and encourage your spouse or partner to do the same, you're laying the foundation of trust and safety. And again, being supportive. You can do this by showing empathy and validating her concerns. You don't have to agree necessarily, just validate her concerns and make sure you feel validated as well. Be consistent and reliable with your behavior. This will help to create safety and trust. When you are consistent and predictable with your behavior, you are showing that you are dependable, which helps to create safety and trust. Part of that is being consistent with your word and commitments, and being consistent with showing your support and affection too. Respecting each other's boundaries is big. Yeah, man, avoid being controlling and give your partner or spouse the space they need. And part of respecting each other's boundaries is to accept each other's individuality and autonomy. That was something Eric had to let go of. And it can go a long way in creating safety and trust. It allows each of you to be free to be your authentic selves. Make sure you work on your conflict resolution skills. I can't stress this enough. It's so important to work things out in a healthy way to help avoid prolonged arguments and feeling disconnected. Learning skills like active listening that I mentioned. Try to come from yourself with those I statements. Instead of saying, you need to blah, 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 say something like, I feel whatever, and I need you to blah, blah, blah. So you're coming from yourself. And focus on the issue or behavior, not the person. I did a whole episode on that. And the last thing I'll say is try to come from a place or energy of continued support and encouragement. So many times I've seen couples get cynical and lose sight of the fact that, you know what, you love this person, and to be supportive in whatever they are going through. That can be emotional support, pragmatic support, the day-to-day stuff. It could even be financial support. It's being supportive and collaborative during the good times as well as the not so good times. And be encouraging with your spouse or partner's goals and personal growth rather than being critical or responding negatively. Encouragement and support, again, helps to create an environment of trust and safety. Now, I want to say that if you think your past wounds are getting in the way of creating a safe and trusting relationship, please reach out for help. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. Get that help. No shame. It's all good. I found a quote from psychologist and author Esther Perel. She does a lot of relationship work, and it sums it up pretty nicely. She says, quote, "The quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life. Creating safe, secure, and nurturing connections with others is fundamental to our well-being." Unquote. Yep, a relationship that is safe and sound. And that will bring this episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast to an end. The Safe and Sound, How to Build Safety and Trust in Relationship episode. My name is Bill Simpson. Thanks for listening. Coming up on the next episode of the Men on the Path to Love podcast, it is another bonus episode with my guest, Jemai. You may have seen him in season 14 of The Voice. He was on Team Alicia Keys. He was the singing telegram guy. Well, anyway, when Jemai was 6 years old, his mother was a victim of domestic violence. At just 23 years old, she was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. Jemai released an album about it entitled 23. He's just released the 23 docuseries in which he takes us through that tragic event and his experience of dealing with grief and the mental health aspect of losing his mother to domestic violence. His goal is to normalize men speaking of their grief. It's a conversation I think every man should hear. Please join me for the Grief and Grace, Jemai's Story of Love, Loss, and Legacy episode. And if you have an idea for the show, please let me know. You can reach me at my website, menonthepathtolove.com, where you can sign up for a free coaching session on how to communicate better in relationship. I also have a free cheat sheet you can download called 5 Ways to Communicate Better in Relationship. Simply go to menonthepathtolove.com. Now, here comes the part where I ask you to help me make the world a better place with more love and connection by posting this podcast to your social media. Come on now, it's time to share the link and share the love. And until next time, keep your heart open and stay on the path to love.